forces which complement and complete each other. Yin and yang are most often depicted with this symbol, the taijitu. Although the light and dark sides defy each other, each contains a piece of the other fundamentally embedded within. Together, the opposing forces exist in a state of balanced equilibrium. Numerous examples of yin and yang exist in nature, such as the brightest light creating the harshest shadows. But perhaps the most
For real, man. For real. Betul sir. Like, copyright strike and suppose
fascinating application of yin and yang exists in the realm of fiction, in the relationship between heroes and villains. We all grow up listening to the same kind of story. A valiant hero overcomes the odds to defeat a despicable villain. We learn to view heroes and villains as part of a binary system. We root for the good guys and root against the bad guys. It's a principle that all but defines the essence of storytelling. As children, we view this as an unbreakable law, but as we get older, something very mysterious happens. The line between heroes and villains starts to blur. All of a sudden, heroes start to look a lot more lame, while villains become all the more appealing. If you look at the word villain in the dictionary, nearly every definition you'll find will mention the word evil. But what exactly is evil? Well, in most cultures, the concept of good and evil are tied to our premise of morality. Our morality is often determined by whatever religious or spiritual code we grew up with. Religions across the globe embody evil through the image of the devil. As the face of evil for the world's most popular religion, Satan is likely the most infamous villain in human history.
Most religions portray me as the incarnate of evil, meaning my actions literally define what it is to be immoral. It's tough to get more evil than that. In fact, it's impossible.
Each version of the devil shares similar traits, but none are identical. There is no definitive answer for what constitutes an evil action.
All right, I can see that I will have to teach you how to be villains.
The notion of evil is an abstraction and can be altered depending on the society in place around us. Evil assumes the purpose of a blanket term attributed to people who cause us negative outcomes. Morality is one of the most difficult concepts for the human mind to understand. Everyone has their own set of complex needs and motivations. It's much easier to just look at the source of all your suffering and call it evil. It's much easier to write a story and have the antagonists do bad things because they're evil. Unfortunately, evil villains also tend to be forgettable villains. I mean, does anybody really remember Maleficent? Her name is a literal synonym for evil. The problem with evil characters is that we have a hard time relating to them. Contrary to what the media will tell you, the average person doesn't tend to enjoy doing malicious things. To create a truly memorable villain, you have to connect them with the audience in a meaningful way. One of the most common and effective methods of achieving this is to establish a transformation from friend to fiend.
Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
The most well-known example of this transformation is the character of Darth Vader. In A New Hope, Vader is more or less presented as a standard formidable bad guy without much character depth. We're told he was once good, but we don't actually get to see this dimension of Vader until The Empire Strikes Back, where for the
I don't want to do this. I want to see my own stream.
much character depth. We're told he was once good, but we don't actually get to see this dimension of Vader until The Empire Strikes Back, where for the
I don't want to do this. I want to see my own stream.
much character depth. We're told he was once good, but we don't actually get to see this dimension of Vader until The Empire Strikes Back, where for the
I don't want to do this. I want to see my own stream. Must subscribe to the channel by the way. Thank you.
much character depth. We're told he was once good, but we
100 subscriber ka channel. That's good.
ከፈለ ማለት ነው። ይሄን የሰራሁት በአንድ ቀን ነው። 0.7 ቶን ኮይን ነውና የአንድ ቶን ኮይን ዋጋ ደግሞ እስከ $8 ይገመታልና በየቀኑ የኔ ያክል ምትሰሩ ከሆነ ሰው መጋበዙ እንዲሁም ደግሞ ታስኮች ምትሰሩ ከሆነ የኔ ያክል ታገኛላችሁ። ስለዚህ እስከ መጨረሻው ተከታተሉኝ። ስለዚህ ኤርድሮፕ አሳያችኋለሁ። ሃምስተር ኮምባት ሊስት ከመደረጉ ቀድሞ እንደዚህ አይነት ፈጣን ኤርድሮፖች ግን እየከፈሉ ስለሆነ እንደዚህ አይነት ብትሳተፉ ስለመከራችሁ ዛሬ ይዤላችሁ መጣሁ። ለዛ ነው ቪዲዮ እንደምትወዱ ስለማልጠራጠር ላይክ አድርጋችሁ ጀምሩ። ከወዳችሁ መጨረሻ ሰብስክራይብ ታደርጉኛላችሁ። እንጀምር። ኦኬ ጋይ ዛሬ ያመጣሁላችሁ ቪዲዮ በጣም አጭር ነው፣ ግን ወዳችሁት ወይም ደግሞ ቶሎ እንድጀምሩ ስለፈለኩ ነው። ምክንያቱም በጣም ብዙ በገባበት ቁጥር አንድ ኤርድሮፕ በጣም እየሰፋ ስለሚሄድ ታስኮችም እየጨመሩ ስለሚሄዱ አብዛኛው ሰው ላይ ተጠቀም ይችላልና ስለዚህ ዛሬ ያመጣሁላችሁ ምን መሰላችሁ? ልክ ሰርታችሁ እንደጨረሳችሁ በ24 ሰዓት ውስጥ እናንተ ስሩላቸው፣ እነሱ ምንም ችግር የለባቸውም፣ ወዲያውኑ ይከፍሏችኋል። በጣም ዘገየ ከተባለ ደግሞ ክፍያችሁን ዊዝድሮ ትሉታላችሁ፣ ወደ ሌላ ታስክ ትገባላችሁ። ነገር ግን ብራችሁ ከፈለገ ከ24 ሰዓት በኋላ ይገባላችኋልና ኤርድሮፕ ይባላል ማለት ነው። አብሊ ይባላል። ገብታችሁ መስራት ትችላላችሁ። ከኔ ቴሌግራም ቻናል ላይ ሊንኩን አስቀምጬላችኋለሁ። ከፈለጋችሁ ሰርች አድርጋችሁ መግባት ትችላላችሁ። ነገር ግን አብዛኛው ሰው ሰርች አድርጋ አልመጣልኝም ስላለ ከኔ ቴሌግራም ቻናል ላይ ገብታችሁ በመንካት ብቻ ማግኘት ትችላላችሁ ማለት ነው። በመቀጠል ምን ታደርጋላችሁ ማለት ነው? ታስክ ጨርሳላችሁ ወይም ደግሞ ሶት ጋብዛላችሁ። እንደዛ አድርጋችሁ ከጨረሳችሁ በኋላ ዊዝድሮው ትሉታላችሁ። ዊዝድሮው ካላችሁ በኋላ የቶን ኪፐር ዋሌታችሁን አስገባ ይላችኋል። በመቀጠልም የቶን ኪፐር ዋሌታችሁ ታስገቡ፣ ወዲያውኑ ልክ እንደዚህ አድርጎ ይልክላችኋል ማለት ነው። እናንተ መስራት ከፈልጋችሁ እንደዚህ አድርጋችሁ ስሩ። አብሊን ጀምሩት፣ ሁላችሁም ትጠቀሙበታላችሁ። ቶንኮይ ማሸነፍ ከፈልጋችሁ ይሄ ለእናንተ ነው። ሰብስክራይብ ማድረግ እንዳይረሳ። ይመቻችሁ።
ነው ቪዲዮ
The kids in Despicable Me have not aged at all. Let's first look at the kids in Despicable Me 1. In this movie, Margot is 12, Edith is 9, and Agnes is 6 years old. Now let's look at the most recent movie, Despicable Me 4. The kids look the exact same age. How can this be? Well, let's look at the timeline. Despicable Me 1 takes place in 2009. Despicable Me 2 takes place in 2010. Despicable Me 3 takes place in 2011. And as of now, we don't know the exact year Despicable Me 4 takes place in, but we can do some investigating. We know that there is a baby in the new trailer that is 6 months old. And according to Google, Lucy was supposedly pregnant in Despicable Me 3, but she definitely wasn't showing. This means she probably went through like 6 to 7 months of pregnancy. I'm pretty sure. I'm not a pregnancy expert. And since we know that the baby is 6 months old, we can infer it's probably been a year, meaning this movie takes place in 2012. So now that we know all of that, this means from the first movie to the fourth movie, it has been 3 entire years. This meaning Margot should technically be 15, Edith should be 12, and Agnes should be 9. But this is not the case whatsoever. They look exactly the same. They haven't aged a day, an hour, a minute. Let's get some real life examples of these age progressions to compare. So this is a real person, aging from 12 to 15, then 9 to 12, and finally 6 to 9. Pretty big differences. Now let's look back at the progression of these kids. It looks nothing like this video at all, obviously. Now some people simply explain this by saying in this universe there is no defined sense of continuity, and it just simply doesn't matter. That's it. Finish the video. I'm joking. This obviously makes no sense. Because there's literally a baby that's 6 months old, meaning time has definitely passed. Also, I'd be a bad overthinker if I just stopped here and took defeat. So I narrowed it down to 2 possible suspects that could be the cause of this aging problem. The first subject is Gru. Let's analyze Gru before we had these girls. Gru was a super evil villain who literally stole the moon. The literal moon. He seemed depressed and miserable, and we barely even see this man smile. Not to mention, it seems his villainous acts only provide him with temporary happiness. I say this because of the fact he resorted to stealing the moon, the ultimate villainous act. Going for a big job like that means the little things were not bringing him the same satisfaction they once were, and he had to just go really big. Not to mention, he was extremely lonely. And I know he had his minions, but at first he was very cold-hearted and didn't care or love them as much and simply just used them as minions. And yeah, he has a dog, but this dog was not lovable at all at first. It was a loner and just a scary little thing. Then he also had Dr. Nefario, but they weren't very close or best friends, at least from my knowledge. This guy was just practically his worker. He sat in the dungeon, just created weapons and tools. I mean, that's practically it. Not to mention we get literal proof when we see how he treats Dr. Nefario. When Dr. Nefario created the fart gun, Gru treated him like a complete idiot. It wasn't considerate whatsoever. You can't blame Gru though, because he had no real support system or real genuine love. He had no idea how to be a good person. Now the minions were kind of a good support system, but like I said, because of his cold heart, he never recognized it or even gave time to explore that. And let's not forget his mother. Oh boy, this woman did not love him one bit. She completely ignored him. Look mom, I made a rocket. Look mom. She made him feel extremely unimportant and unseen. So now let's fast forward to when Gru adopts the kids. Of course, at first, he only adopted them to steal Victor's shrink ray for his moon mission, so at first there was no love whatsoever. They were simply just pawns to him. But through this journey, he started to warm up to them, and they brought out a side of him that he never even knew he had. Gru going to Funland with the girls changed everything. He started off absolutely hating it, but at the end, he genuinely enjoyed it and had an amazing time. We see this when he gets back, and we see a huge, genuine smile on his face, which we have never seen in this film so far. We also get more proof here that Dr. Nefario was not such a great support system, which isn't completely his fault, to be honest. They were simply just villain partners. But upon seeing Gru genuinely happy, he shuts it down real quick and tells him they can't afford to have any more distractions, practically saying he needs to stop hanging out with the kids, or pretty much implying he has to get rid of them. Nefario is a villain.
I it's just Dr. Nefario was right. ምክንያቱም like no distractions man, ምንም distraction አያስፈልግም። ቆፍጠን ብሎ መስራት አይደል? He has a dream to take the moon. Like play around. No. Work. You're right, man. He's right.
Villain though, obviously, and of course cares more about their villain plans and Gru's happiness, which makes sense. The next part that changes Gru is when we see that he has no money and can't afford to pay for the rocket to get to the moon, to which the kids come and give him all their money. This also motivates the minion to start funding in and giving him money too. This is where we see a little sparkle in Gru's eyes, and he starts to feel genuine love, which is something he has never once experienced. Then during the montage of Gru building the rocket, we see him slowly start falling more in love with these kids. We finally see Gru's cold heart fade away as he reads the girls a bedtime story. After reading the end of the book, which reads, "Your mommy loves you with all her heart," and he looks like he's about to cry. Not only did this part make him feel like a bad dad, it also made him remember his trauma. His mom treated him so bad, and he realized in this moment that he wanted to do better, and he wasn't. But as he gets closer to crying, it scares him, and he slams the book shut and starts to rush out of the room. Agnes asks him if he's going to give them some goodnight kisses, and while he does say no, he genuinely looks sad about this and feels guilty. These girls are really starting to change this man to the point he literally starts doubting his plans and tries to reschedule it to go to his daughter's dance recital. You have to realize, in the beginning of this movie, this was the most important thing to him ever, and he was so excited. And now he wants to push back stealing the moon for these girls. Of course, Dr. Nefario once again convinces him of what is more important, stealing the moon. This part also kind of seems like he is falling.
እንደዛ ነው ከምሬን ነው። Like Nefario was right all the time. He is right all the time.
Out of love of being a villain and falling in love with being a dad instead. Dr. Nefario, by the way, being the worst support system ever, calls up the adoption lady and told her Gru wanted to get rid of the girls. So he answers the door and he's completely shocked by this, and she tells him that she's taking the girls, and we can see how upset this makes him. And it's honestly pretty sad Dr. Nefario would do this, but it's hard to blame him, that he's a villain, Then we get a montage of Gru being depressed, and this is just more proof of how lonely he was before the girls. But anyways, he continues with his plan to steal the moon, and we get more proof of what I said earlier about temporary pleasures, as he finally gets the moon in his hands and realizes instantly of how unimportant it is. Keep in mind, this should have been the most important moment of his life. And then in 5 seconds, his mind wanders straight to, "I can make it to the recital." And he does finally make it, but they're not there. He was late. And he finds out Vector captured his kids and set up a trade. The kids for the moon. And we watch as this once heartless creature gives up the moon in seconds, which is insane. His life's work. The heist that would make him a top villain just traded away for these girls. Of course, Vector, being Vector, pulled a fast one on him and tries stealing both the girls and the moon. Then we watch as he risks his life and stops at nothing to save them. And we even see Dr. Nefario coming to save him and help save the girls. This part is crazy because it really shows the impact these girls had. They changed 2 cold-blooded villains into caring people. And a little off topic, but earlier, the girls literally brought out a side of the mom we have never seen before. She looks caring and present. It's just insane. Anyways, in the end, Gru does end up saving the girls. Then he takes them home and reads them a bedtime story he made. And in the end, he says something very important. And now he knows he can never part from those 3 little kittens who changed his heart. Now you're probably wondering why I just recapped the entire movie practically. And the reason is to really express how much of an impact these girls really had on Gru. And it's simply the best defense to explain why Gru would de-age these girls. Gru in this movie is 50 years old. And after 50 years of a miserable, unhappy life, with an empty void never filled, it finally got filled, and he felt happy for once. This has to scare Gru pretty bad. That book story is really important. because he admits that he could never part from them, because he is aware they changed his heart. At this age, these kids adore Gru and love him with all their heart, and risking losing that could change everything for Gru. Even more proof is in the second movie, where Margot starts to explore dating, and this drives Gru crazy. At first it seems like a simple dad thing, trying to protect his daughter, but I think it's deeper than that. He is scared that if Margot dates, she will spend more time with the boy and forget about him. This also could have inspired the idea of de-aging, because he saw that the other girls thought dating was disgusting, and so he realized that if Edith and Agnes hit Margot's age, they'd probably want to date too and leave him behind. Gru is obviously terrified of going back to his past self and being miserable, and he has to fear relapsing back into his villainous ways. These kids keep him on the right path, and make Gru a genuinely very good person and keep him happy. I mean, would old Gru dress as Tinkerbell to make a little girl happy? I do not think so. Now, Gru seems very suspicious, but we can't rule out anything yet because the next suspect is Illumination. There's no doubting that these kids are extremely iconic, not to mention Agnes. The "It's So Fluffy" meme was huge, like huge. This meme ruled the internet for years. Everyone thought Agnes was extremely cute, not to mention people simply just loved the girls altogether. I think personally, the future movies could have benefited from exploring these girls at an older age. It could have been very interesting and added more depth to the other films. But honestly, most companies like to stick with what works. These kids helped make such a successful film that literally became a huge franchise. Despicable Me 1, Despicable Me 2, Despicable Me 3, Despicable Me 4, Minions, and Minions Rise of Gru. Not to mention countless shorts. Changing these characters could mean potential